So, in our book, The High Achiever's Guide to Wealth, you're the author of our chapter on saving versus spending versus repaying your debt. And it's really right up front. We have a first chapter that's more sort of philosophically about what is wealth, what is achievement, which mirrors our earlier episode this season talking to our colleague Larry Elkin. But your chapter really is sort of the first deep dive into a more practical topic. That might seem a little basic to some of our readers, but why is getting the balance of saving, spending, and repaying your debt right so important to starting off on the right foot?
Well, the reason it's so foundational is that, these are a few of the core elements of personal finance, really. So, balancing your spending with your saving and repaying debt, it's really how you build a sustainable financial life going forward, and it's not just a one-time decision either, because your circumstances, your goals, even your emotions are going to change over time, right? So, for example, your financial goals when you've just graduated college, they might be focused on building an emergency fund or saving for a big trip. But once you're married and have kids, your priorities are going to shift to things, like buying a home or saving for a child's education. So the trick really is just be flexible while maintaining discipline in these areas, because they really set the stage for everything else.
That makes a lot of sense. So listeners who've been listening along in order will have just heard our conversation with Rebecca Pavesi, where we talked about budgeting in a little more detail. But it seems like building a savings cushion and paying down debt, the sort of other two components of your chapter, can be complicated for a lot of people, not only because, as you just said, goals change and you're in a different place, but starting out early in life, it can be emotional too, to sort of think about what kind of things are my priorities? What do I really care about? Am I willing to deny myself some of the things I want now in service of longer term goals? As a financial planner, how do you deal with either clients or other people in your life asking you for advice who are struggling with this balance, either for practical reasons or emotional ones?
Emotions definitely play a role in this, and that's completely natural. I've worked with clients who will feel overwhelmed by debt or sitting down and putting together a budget, reviewing their expenses. But, one thing I tell them, and at least in the case of debt, is that just to remember that debt isn't the enemy, rather lack of having a plan is. So making a plan really helps to separate the emotion from the decision-making process, and that often helps reduce stress. And that applies also to developing a strategy to repay debt. So I usually suggest starting with tasks that'll provide the client with some small wins, like setting a realistic budget or tackling a minor debt, because it can start to build confidence, and it helps shift their mindset from this idea that, I'm in a hole to I'm actually making some progress here.